Today I thought that I could teach you guys something that is both a hip opener and a hip strengthener. And the hip strengthening component to it has this added quality of being what's called closed chain. So it has a little bit more functionality. And that pose that we're going to play with today is half moon pose. You can play with it in a lot of ways that make it much more accessible to more human beings. And that's what we're going to try to do. There are obviously some limitations sometimes to us practicing at home, sometimes space-wise. You'll see I don't have a tremendous amount of space here, and sometimes prop-wise. So if you happen to have one block, I would love for you to have that block available for your practice today. And if you don't have a block, you can use another household object. You could use something like a foam roller. You could use a book, probably like a sturdier book. And I'm going to explain why I actually really do like having a prop for this particular practice. So we're going to play with half moon pose. We're going to play with all of the hip opening and strengthening that is involved in it. This is going to be an accessible class. And let's begin just taking a comfortable seat. Thank you for being here. Invite a settling in of your bones, a softening of the expression on your face. You could put one hand over your heart if you'd like, one hand over your belly. Invite length in the back of your neck. Chin drops down slightly. Breath is easy. You don't have to force anything breath-wise in my classes. Have a sense that the little corners of the mouth are turning up. There's an easeful, steady quality to breath. And roll your shoulders a little bit. Allow the hands to drop down. Invite the eyelids to flick open. And come all the way down onto the floor. If you were sitting on something like I was, come on down to the floor. Just to this position. Seated with your feet out in front of you, feet flat. I call this one picnic sit. And you're just going to drop your knees a little to the right and to the left. So fair warning, as always, when I'm filming in this room, you are going to hear my floor get a little creaky. And so that's what that extra noise is happening. When we play with a pose like half moon pose, we're going into something called hip external rotation and hip flexion and hip abduction. So I think I mentioned this already, but I'm a physical therapist and I've been teaching yoga since the year 2001. And so one of the phenomena that I hear very often in teaching these live classes is hips popping. It happens in triangle pose, it happens in other pose. But there's ways to kind of prepare your hips so they're not so subject to that instability pop that tends to happen with half moon. Now, posting your hands behind you, that just means keeping your elbows straight. You can turn your fingers in whatever direction feels good. Feet nice and wide apart. We're going to take a couple of reverse table poses. So this will start to fire up both the quads and the back of the hips. And you can just stay up as long as you like. You can go up as high as you like. If you need something a little kinder to your wrists, then come on down to your forearms or just do a regular bridge pose, right? So this one's pretty hard to lift up off the floor, but it's good for your hips. And if you want something a little more athletic, then you're going to work on these kind of rainbow shapes here. And then the next time your hips come down towards the ground, get a sense of settling and sweep both of your feet over to one side. So on this side, we're going to play with the block, if you have it, under the knee that is furthest away from you. So I've got my knees kind of staggered. I would call this like a flower petal kind of stagger. They're sort of not quite overlapping here. And I just slid the block under the far knee, right? So now I can work on some rotator action here. But before we do that, if you don't have a block or a book, then you can also kind of just prop your knee up on your other foot. You'll get a bit of a massage-like quality. This hand can be a fist. It can be, again, on your forearm, which will give your hip a little bit more freedom if this particular hip feels stiff for you. So, foot lifts and lowers. Knee is bent to 90 degrees. This is the far knee, right? Not the one the closest to my chest. And I'm getting internal rotation happening here. I'm going to spread my toes a bit of both feet. Lots of energy, lots of action there. And let's do about 2 more of these. It's a bit harder to practice this when your arm is straight. So feel free to go down onto your knees as needed. So now that we've done internal rotation, let's go ahead and do external rotation. So option 1, this is going to be probably the most accessible option, is just to stay here and do something that looks a lot like a clamshell. So I'm keeping my foot on the floor, pivoting on the foot, keeping my pelvis stable, top hand is rooting there to help stabilize the pelvis. Number 2, to make it just a little bit more athletic, you could prop the foot up, and that way you're going to go through a bigger range of motion. That's all it's going to do. Number 3, you can come up onto your hand, which is going to take it into more probably a tighter range of motion, one where you don't feel that you can lift up quite so much. And we just have 2 more of these. If you have a block or a dense book or something, keep it right where it is. And we're going to come onto our backs before we do the other side. So heels, not just the soles of your feet, but your heels on the block, come in relatively close. You want your knees to be at about a 90-degree angle by the time you lay down. You're going to make robot arms, which is just forearms to the sky, pinky fingers point up towards the sky. And you're going to lift up into a bridge pose here, actively pulling up your front hip points, lengthening through the back of your pelvis. Yeah, lots of length. I'm hugging my legs into an imaginary block right here. Breathing, keeping the pelvis nice and neutral here, engaging both glutes, both sets of hamstrings evenly. And then I'm going to lower the spine right back down. Let's do 2 more of those with that nice long hold. So notice that you're digging in your heels, even if your heels are on the floor. If you have your heels on a foam roller, this is really, really hard because of the instability of the foam roller. So if you want to ramp it up and you happen to have access to that, go for it. I start with this posterior pelvic tilt, front hip points roll up towards my eyeballs, and I'm just sort of like smushing my back into the floor. And then I'm going to lift up just my buttocks, just my pelvis, just the low back, vertebra by vertebra. And then the lowest couple of ribs. I'm really not trying to get any higher than that. And I'm really not trying to back bend whatsoever at all. So even if it looks like I'm in a back bend, know that there's a strong effort of lengthening my back body, of digging my heels in. Arms are pretty soft here. And then I'm going to lengthen, lengthen, lengthen all the way down. Okay, we've got 1 more. I'll instruct this one with a little more quiet, a little more spaciousness. Dig heels, flatten back, lift from the tailbone, Feel the underside of your glutes, feel the underside of your thighs, your hamstrings really activate. 3 nice spacious breaths at the top, so much length in back body. Soft face, soft arms, soft neck. Lengthen, lengthen. Vertebra by vertebra, and lower down. Draw your knees into your chest. You might separate your knees a little bit, rock a little side to side. You can take happy baby if you'd like, but I'm actually a big fan of just steering the ship, as I call it, hands to the inner thighs, and just sort of let everything kind of jiggle into place, a bit more dynamic of a quote-unquote stretch. It's a bit more time to allow your hips to adjust to this position. And then, however feels good to you, you're going to roll to your side, rise up, and come into the opposite side position that we were in before. So, legs sweep over to the other side. And again, if you have the block, you can place it under the knee. If you have a book, you can place it under the knee. Or you can just place your top knee on the foot of your other leg. Hand to the floor or forearm to the floor. Forearm to the floor is going to be more accessible. And we'll go through internal rotation. So I'm spreading my toes, lifting the foot, trying to get a bit of height under that leg here. Breath is easy. I stopped teaching, if you haven't picked that up just yet from my classes, I stopped teaching Ujjayi breath a number of years ago. And one of the reasons for that is because I felt that it kind of added to people's tension and people's anxiety. It just became like one more thing on the to-do list. So if Ujjayi is like joyful and easy and helps you to steady in your practice, then please stick with it. And if you also happen to notice a little bit of that anxiety, then definitely don't worry about it. Separate your knees a little bit more. Now we're going to go through the more clamshell type variation. You can make it just a touch harder by having a block, something to prop up your foot. You can make it a touch more accessible by dropping onto your outside elbow. If you have any stiffness or any like arthritis or just hip gunky feeling, this can be a really nice way to get your strength on and not feel so stuck. And we just have a couple more of these. And then we're going to rise back up if you came down into your forearms. Sweep the soles of both feet to touch one another. Now, for anybody who is more comfortable, feel free to sit on a little something. That gives you a bit of spaciousness here, but it's not mandatory. For anybody who is regularly kind of challenged sitting on the floor, I'm going to teach you a technique called contract relax. So you're going to place your hands in this Baddha Konasana shape, seated Baddha Konasana, not Supta, right on the inside of your thighs. Now, I'm not forcing them down, I'm not pushing. I'm actually just landing them lightly, and then I'm actually going to push with my thighs up into my hands. So this is a contraction of my inner thighs. Maybe about 30% effort. And then as you relax, you might notice that your muscles have a little bit more give to them. That there's a bit more ease, that the knees drop down a little more freely. For those of you who are already plastered to the floor, you probably don't feel anything, but play along anyway. Press the knees into the hands lightly for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. And we're going to do one more of those. Press the knees into the hands. This time as you relax, see if you can scoop your hands underneath the knees, and there's going to be kind of like a firm handshake, like a competitive handshake as you push your knees down into your hands. Hands try to push right back up into the knees, and we're just going to hold it there. So we invited the inner thigh muscles to turn off, right, through contraction and relaxation. And we're inviting now the opposite muscles, the muscles that are required to externally rotate, abduct our hips, to kick in, to activate. So we're turning those on. We're kind of prepping the nervous system and priming the muscles. Go ahead and come onto all fours as you're ready. Again, for anybody who's got some wrist stuff, feel free to do this motion on your forearms. We'll start with one leg stretched back, right? And you're aiming for that leg to be in line with your upper body. You're going to bend the knee. Keep the thigh in line with the upper body. That's the tricky part. And then go ahead and just dip it down a little bit and lift it up. Dip and lift. You can make this a bit more challenging and a bit more concentrated in your glutes, which is really what we want. I don't want you to feel this in your back. I don't want you to feel this anywhere other than your standing leg and your lifted leg and maybe the arms a bit. Here's the challenge. Take your opposite hand, in my case my left hand because my right leg is lifting, to the belly, stabilizing and getting a sense of like almost no movement in the abdomen as you lift and lower this leg. Now, if the hip's not too crazy tired, start to draw some circles out to the side, down, back, and just let the circle get as big as feels good to you in this moment. This is called active range of motion. Very often we might do some of these ranges of motion, I'm switching directions with the circle, in a more passive way. We might use a strap, we might use our arms to move the leg. Do one more nice big circle, as big as feels good to you, and then settle down. Knees wide, come into child's pose. Bonus points if you spread your toes in child's pose. So hang there in child's pose if you'd like, and if you want a little bit more information on what is passive versus active. So a passive stretch to my wrist and my fingers might be my hand pulling back on the opposite hand. An active stretch might be me actually doing as much of that as I can, maybe even repeatedly, maybe even in a circle. So just actively moving through the same range of motion versus passive. And usually you can get more motion with passive, which is why it's tempting to work on that. Whenever you're ready, come to the other side, so back onto your table or your forearm table position. Opposite leg straightens back behind you. Bend that knee, sole of the foot is facing towards the ceiling. Shin is as perpendicular as you can get it. And you're going to go up and down. And again, add a little bit of challenge by bringing your opposite hand to your belly. If you have access to a chair, this can feel a little bit easier with your arms kind of propped up on the seat of a chair. So that's also an option. If you do have your hand on your abdomen, keep everything connected. Try not to wiggle so much there. And the last one, lower the hands. Keep the knee lifted if it's not too tired. Bring it out to the side and start to draw your circles. And this is not, the effort here is not trying to lift your knee necessarily higher than your hip. Just trying to stay in a zone in which you feel that you've got some muscular control. We'll switch in the other direction. Building as much range of motion as is reasonable for this moment in our bodies, actively. Last circle. Lower down, curl your toes, look between your knees, see if you can spread all 10 toes out, and stretch through the arms, reach the hips back and get this nice active reach through the shoulders. Breath into the back body. And then as you're ready, let's shift forward to table and then up and back to downward facing dog. So if it's your first down dog of the day, this is my first down dog of the day, go ahead and bend one knee and then the other. getting out any little kinks in the back body. And I want you to hang out here, maybe alternating between table pose or child's down dog for a softer version, or if you're feeling more energetic today, alternating between a plank, squeezing your glutes, and downward facing dog. Okay. And so from here, we're going to get to the backs of the legs a little bit, but we're going to give it some time. Walk your hands slowly to the back of your yoga mat. Feet are hip distance or wider apart, so mine are actually shoulder distance apart. And go ahead and shake out your head. Notice that I've got my knees really intentionally bent here. Let out any big sighs. Nod your head up and down. And then go ahead and start to stack vertebra by vertebra until your head is the last thing to rise into place. Roll your shoulders a couple times, maybe forward and maybe back, and then stand on one leg. Gaze at something that won't move, that's your drishti, and lift your other knee high as you can. So we're just going to work on this for the moment. A lot of the lift of the lifted leg is coming from a pushing down with the standing leg. So you're getting that lift from the pushing down. And gently drawing through the abdomen, so you're not going into a big back bend here or leaning back. Lowest ribs drop down, and then slowly lower and shake it out. We'll shift to the other side, rooting down through the standing leg. And then from that rooting place, lift your lifted leg. So again, lowest ribs drop down. Standing leg is strongly pushing into the ground. That's going to help lift this lifted leg, so it's a coordinated reciprocal action. And then slowly lower down. You can always, for any balance action, have your hand on something to help support you. So let's go back to that first side. Lift. And then this time, take a little bit of a leap. Tiny lunge. And then we're going to step it back. Root to the other side. Lift. Big leap. And bend knees. And bounce back. So this is leaping into a little bit of a lunge. Not the biggest lunge you've ever done. Bouncing back just to work on our kind of fluidity with the standing movements. So even if yours looks like this, like a tiny little step and a little bend and then a step back, you've got this. Just hold on to something as needed. So first side, lift, leap, bend both knees, and then you can use your arms, create a little momentum to come on back. Other side, lift, leap, bend both knees, use your arms, try not to use your trunk too much, come on back. One more time each side. One leg lifts, that leg leaps forward, both knees bent. We gather up some energy, pop back. Other leg lifts, step, bend, gather, and back. Inhale, arms reach. Exhale, soft fold forward. Knees are soft, head is soft, everything shakes out. Walk yourself out to downward facing dog. Inhale forward to plank, optional knees down plank. And then everybody lower to your knees. Let's take chin and chest this first round, so elbows go out to the sides. From the belly, all the way down to the belly. Float the chest, squeeze the shoulders, shoulder blades towards one another. Keep the chin relatively down, back of the neck long. Hands up, maybe to shoulder height, maybe a little higher in this W shape. And then add the legs. So we're really working back body here as well. Lower. Lift a little higher if you'd like, maybe a cobra pose. Connect to your core, find table or plank, and then again, downward facing dog. And just notice the difference in the back of your legs this round versus your first round. And go ahead and take a nice slow motion walk, feet to hands. If you have some yoga blocks, 2 yoga blocks, one that you can put under each hand, that can be really, really nice for giving a little added space. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, if you've got the space beside you, arms go out to the side, otherwise arms forward. Rise up, ribs down. Press your palms together over your heart. We move with intention in our practice. So whatever it is that you are working with today, come into that remembrance and send out a prayer internally. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, soft bend and fold. Inhale, halfway. Exhale, we're going to begin with our right leg back, fingertips down to the floor, and just go ahead and bend and straighten your front knee a couple of times. I'm looking at my back toes here, spreading them wide and making sure that my first toe is pointed forward. If you have any bunion tendencies, then this is actually like a really good practice to help to undo some of that. Go ahead and take your back heel and just sink it down. Your pelvis is going to go way off on the diagonal, and lift it up. Sink it down and lift it up. Your front knee is still pointing forward, so if you want to, you can take the hand on the same side as the front knee. Put that hand on your knee so you're going to feel if it starts to veer off course. My spare hand is just on the floor, on my fingertips, or if I wanted to, I could put it on a block here. That would probably be a little more comfortable. And so back heel down and up a few times. Now I'm going to keep that back heel down, lift up through the chest, keep the pelvis on a diagonal, float the heart, shoulders are facing the front, short edge of the mat, arms reach up, warrior one. Palms over the heart, return to intention. Exhale as I come down, back heel lifts. I prepare the body for plank, front foot steps back. Roll to tiptoes, optional knees down this time. Half chaturanga. Inhale, using all the muscles of your back body. Exhale, lengthen. Connect to your core, coming back through your plank or knee down plank. Up and back, downward facing dog. Shake out the head. Start to shimmy. Right knee bends, left knee bends. And again, we're going to take a slow motion walk to the front of the yoga mat. Notice that I'm trying to keep my knees as straight as possible. They may not stay exactly 100% straight, but I'm trying. Halfway up. Exhale, bend and fold. Other foot to the back, in this case my left leg. And I'm just going to drop into the lunge, staying on my fingertips here. Bend and straighten the front knee a few times. So this helps to really adjust your nervous system more than anything to the positions. And then staying low, you can put the same side hand on that front knee, in my case right hand on right knee. Sink your back heel down and up, down and up, down and up. Now, I don't know if you guys are noticing this, but I notice as I do this, a lot of work happening in my front leg, not just in the one that's pivoting right now. As your heel sinks down, float the chest, keep pressing the pelvis down, but allow it to be at this diagonal. Inhale, arms up, warrior one. Exhale, palms over the heart, return our awareness to our intention for our practice today. Whatever good vibes you want to send outward or inward. Back heel lifts as you lower your hands. Optional vinyasa, feel free to just go straight to down dog or child's. Connecting to your core after your back bend is a really essential part, in my humble opinion, of the Surya Namaskar, of the vinyasa. And from downward facing dog, if you happen to have a block, I'm going to show you this more accessible version of our next move. So I'm going to put my block in the medium height under my left hand. Heel of my left hand is on this back corner of the block. My thumb and pinky finger wrap around. So now I'm in an asymmetrical down dog. I'm going to take the same side leg, lift it up, bend that knee, turn it out to the side, kind of like we did in table pose earlier. And then as I lean forward, I have that little extra space of the block to set the foot down. So it's completely optional, but it gives you a little bit extra space. So this is where I want everybody to be. Sink your back heel down, lift it up, sink and lift. Let's do 2 more. Sink and lift, sink and lift. This is our internal and external rotation, really external rotation. We land in that sunk down position of that back heel. Hands to the pelvis, rise up to a neutral spine, and go ahead and start to bend and straighten your front knee. Go ahead and straighten the knee fully, and then get a little bit of sass going in your pelvis. Sass just means swaying the pelvis a little bit side to side. So it doesn't really have to look like anything other than maybe bad dancing. And then sticking your butt back a bit. Slide your front hand gently down the front thigh. You don't even have to go to the shin. If the shin is easily accessible, hang out there. Roll your top shoulder back and maybe look up towards the sky. A couple of steady breaths, no rush. There's a drawing in of my abdomen, of my lowest ribs. And then bend into the knee, park your elbow, arm by your ear, straight line of energy, fingertips to outer heel. Side angle pose. And then as you're ready, root your hands down. No block necessary. Step back and move through your vinyasa. Hang out in child's or hang out in down dog. If you liked that block move and you have the block, go ahead and set the block under your right hand now. Same way we did last time. You're going to lift the right leg, draw the knee out, kind of fire hydrant style, and then slowly with control settle your foot to the outside of the block in front. Now, from here, pelvis is open, right? So you're going to lift the heel, that kind of squares the pelvis to the front, sink it down, lift and sink. One of the questions I get pretty frequently from my anatomy mentees is whether it matters if you have heel-to-heel alignment, heel-to-arch alignment, warrior 1 and warrior 2. As you sink your heel down, rise up into that warrior 2 shape that we were just in on the other side, and bend and straighten your knee. So the answer to that is no, it doesn't really matter. There's no magic number, there's no magic alignment cue. If we take the facts, which are that each of our skeletons, skeletons are shaped a little bit differently. So your pelvis has different characteristics than my pelvis. Your hips have different characteristics on the bony level than my bony structure. Then we know that some people are just going to be more comfortable in various positions. From here, we've done our bending and straightening of the knee. So let's go into the sass of the hips. And feel free to adjust your feet a little closer together. I don't know if you saw that, but I just did. And you're just going to go a little side to side. Bad dancing. Stick your hip out a lot, your back hip. And then front hand just glides down, nothing crazy. Lands above the knee or right below the knee. Lowest ribs snuggle inward, top shoulder rolls back. There are a couple of things that are just not quite accurate as far as some of the common yoga cues. That heel to heel or heel to arch alignment is one of them, because there's no anatomic basis for that. I think we have to do what feels good in our bodies. And for me personally, my right foot's almost always closer to the right side of the mat, left foot closer to the left side of the mat. You can probably see that here, although I may have almost a heel-to-heel alignment. It's a little more separate. We're going to bend this front knee and go ahead and park your elbow on that front thigh. Just this palms facing up position for me and my body seems to kind of help to activate the muscles around the shoulder blade so I don't sink in. So root down there, roll your top shoulder back, still stay connected through your core, so ribs in, back leg strong, especially the outer edge of that back foot really roots to the floor, and then top arm palm faces down by the ear. So if you can feel both the grounded quality as well as a strong lightness in this shape, side angle. And as you are ready, root your hands. Choose your own adventure, back heel lifts, step it back, down dog, or vinyasa. See if you can lift the arches of your feet within the vinyasa, within downward facing dog. We're going to lower right back down to our knees. If you need more cushion, go for it. Add some cushion to under your knees here. And I'm going to pivot so you guys can see what's about to come next. You'll just take one leg, stretch it straight out to the side, and start to rock a little bit forward and back. This can be really nice to create some inner thigh mobility. And then come on up into a kneeling position on your standing leg. The leg that's stretched out to the side, go ahead and turn those toes up towards the sky. Adjust the leg as needed, maybe a little bit in front or further out to the side, whatever would feel good. And then go ahead and bend and straighten. Bend and straighten this leg. As you straighten, toes curl back towards the eyes. Gentle zip up through the belly. Slide your hand down. The hand is going to land onto maybe even the inner shin, maybe your block, maybe the top of the shin. Top arm reaches towards the ear and arm up by the ear. Heel digs in, toes spread, lengthy, 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 length. And then rise up. And a nice hip stability practice is to work on getting into and out of various kneeling positions. If your knee can tolerate the pressure, go ahead and bend, point this other knee to the sky, and see if you can float it nice and slowly back to your full kneeling position. In full kneeling, just shimmy, shift your hips to the right and to the left. We're going to take the other leg out, straight out to the side, hands to the ground, and rock a little bit back and forth. Getting into the inner thigh. I hope you guys enjoy this one. This one is a nice, nurturing shape for the hips. And then from here, you're going to come up to this half kneeling position, turn your toes up towards the sky, adjust a little bit, and then sole of the foot comes down, bend and straighten. And this starts to mimic some of the shape we were in earlier in our Warrior Two, right? So this is like a fallen Warrior Two. If we were leaning onto that leg, it's like a fallen version or a truncated version of side angle. So we're getting the hip to be stable into horizontal abduction, external rotation, a little bit of flexion here. And then go ahead and straighten out your leg. Toes are going to turn up to the sky. You can even do a little bit of internal and external rotation by just dialing your toes forward and back. So we're getting all of the stabilizing muscles just primed in the hip. Glide the hand down the leg, maybe land at the shin, maybe use your block here. Roll the top shoulder back. And then rise, bend in, get your foot flat to the ground, 90% of your weight on your standing leg, drawing the belly in, staying as stable as you can. Arms can help you with this balancing act of bringing your knees parallel to one another and just shifting your weight a bit side to side here. Go ahead and bring your hands to your buttocks. I know this is an unusual cueing for camel, but instead of setting your hands down to the ground, I want you to really feel that these little nuggets back here are kicking in, yeah? So give a bit of a squeeze to your bum, press your pelvis forward, I call it the Elvis pelvis. Lift your shoulders to your ears, yeah, this is gonna lengthen the side waist, side body. Squeeze shoulder blades back, chest up, heart up, chin down, and create a ton of length along the front body. Mostly I'm pressing forward with my very, very active pelvis here. All right, and rise up, not too crazy of a back bend, but if you want to just sit on your toes for a moment, if this is accessible to you, feel free to have your block under your hips if your knees prefer that, and feel free to have your blanket between your thigh and your calves as needed. So time flies. I didn't realize how far along into the practice we are, so we're gonna play with some more standing poses and really fly our way up into half moon, okay? Have your block towards the front edge of your yoga mat. So one of the things I tend to practice in my asana practice, I tend to incorporate in my asana practice, is getting on and off the floor without your hands. So if that is something that you'd like to join me doing, go for it. 1 foot forward, it doesn't matter which one, your strong leg is fine. And then lift and lower your back knee, maybe a couple of times. Step your back foot to the front, Tadasana. Inhale, arms beam. Anjali Mudra over the heart, connecting to breath, connecting to purpose. Draw your left leg high. Arms can be out to the side if that's useful for you for balance. And take a little bit of a circling position with this lifted leg. Feel free to have your toe tap down to the floor. The circling that I'm doing here doesn't look very fancy, but it's getting the exact same hip action on the standing leg and the quote-unquote lifted leg. So whether you're up here doing big arcs or down here staying more modest, same stuff. Switch directions. And then everybody, toes are going to touch, thighs are going to squeeze. Sit down into chair pose, palms over the heart. Please bring one hand to the heart center, so palm down, and one hand to the abdomen or to your low back, whichever is easiest for you to really feel like a connection. And I want you to come in and out of chair pose a couple of times while keeping your spine neutral. And the reason for this is I want us to kind of really play with the idea of a neutral spine so that the hips are doing the work. This is called a hip hinge in physical therapy. And it's just a way to get the action really firing up from the legs as opposed to the low back. Keep your weight shifted onto your right leg. Lift your left knee up. Bend through your right knee. And then step your left foot to the back of the mat. Sink your heel down, open up, find your warrior 2. Bend and straighten your front knee. As you bend in, we're going to come out of this neutral spine. Lean into the back arm, land your hand, find your dancing warrior, peaceful warrior as it's sometimes called. And then bring your front arm forward, elbow to thigh again. And this time, keep the elbow there as you bend and straighten your front knee. You may not straighten your knee quite as much, which is perfectly fine. And then land your hand on your shin or your block. I prefer outside of the foot. And let's emerge into triangle shape. Triangle pose, Trikonasana. If it feels good, your gaze can be up towards your top hand, chin tucked, back of the neck long. down towards the floor, whatever feels good to you. And then we're going to start to play with bouncing up into our half moon shape. So if you do not quite feel ready with your hips, then I'm going to ask you to come back to your warrior two. Why don't we go ahead, I'll do this. So rise back up to a warrior two shape. Start off with your front knee bent, pointing towards the short edge of your mat. And then turn your toes towards the long edge of your mat and back. And so we're straightening a leg to turn the toes towards the long edge of the mat, bending in. So we're really firing up our internal and external rotators right now, mostly the external rotators. And the hip should feel nice and warm. Inner thighs, back leg should feel nice and prepared. As you bend into your front knee again, bring your hand down onto the block. Instead of going into triangle pose, set your block out just about 10 to 12 inches in front of the standing leg foot and just a little to the right of your pinky toe. Back leg should just float up, maybe to hip height, maybe to being in line with the trunk. Spare hand roots to your ribs, helps you to connect in, broadening at the low back, top shoulder, back, arm raises. Keep that energy up if you're on an uneven spot in your floor like I am. And you fall out of it, just come right back into it. So this is half moon. And I hope that you experienced very little sense of unsteadiness, very little to no sense of hip clicking, lots of stability in the hips relative to how we might fly into this position normally. So you're going to come back up to center, grab your block, take it to the other side. Go ahead and let's start with the standing actions. Bring your big toes to touch, one hand to your heart center, one hand to your abdomen. Sit back into chair and stand. Back and stand. Back and stand. And then we're going to take that spare leg, that opposite leg, and start to draw some circles, whether your toe stays on the ground or not, doesn't matter to me. If your leg's up, you're working on creating a sense of stillness in the rest of your body. That doesn't mean you don't adapt to adjust to where the leg is in space, but that I'm not doing it from my waist, right? I'm doing it from my ankle. So the whole body leans. And then go ahead and step this lifted leg back. Sink the heel down, bend and straighten your front knee. Having a real sense of freedom, hopefully in this back hip, a little more than what we started with. Open your arms, find your warrior two shape. Lean into your back arm, peaceful or dancing warrior. Back leg energized, outer edge of that back foot, roots to the ground. And then go ahead and lean forward, elbow to knee. Back of the neck long, chin drops. Roll your top shoulder back and neutral spine, no back bend. Straighten and bend a little bit here with your front leg. And then as you're ready, you're going to keep your hand, bring your hand down to the block if you have it. And I'm just going to adjust a little bit so I have some more space here. We're going to come right back up to that warrior two shape. Bend to the knee, and then straighten and turn your toes forward. Spin the toes out, bend, straighten and turn it forward. So this is that final stage of activating internal and external rotators. And then as you bend in, now lean in, land your hand lightly on the block, walk the block forward, step the back foot in a bit, lift, lift, lift your back leg, top shoulder rolls back, ribs roll back, so much space happening here. You can bring your top arm to the sky, half moon. Straighten and energize your lifted leg. The block, if it is in line with your foot, what you'll find is it's like being on a balance beam. If it's just a little out to the side and a little bit out front, it's going to be much more helpful. And then sometimes I see people put it way out front, and I think it's not that helpful. It should be right under your armpit. Go ahead and bend your standing leg. Step your foot back. If you would like, you can take one final vinyasa here. Block off to the side. Choose your own adventure. Down dog or child's pose. Now you might notice that my child's pose has two interesting characteristics. One, my knees are a little bit wider apart than my shoulders. And two, perhaps the most interesting, is that I kind of use this shape a lot to spread my toes and to get good toe mobility happening. Because when I'm kneeling, when I'm getting on and off the floor outside of yoga class, I'm often wearing shoes. If I have to kneel down outdoors, I'm probably going to have shoes on. I spend this time on the mat getting the kind of toe mobility that's needed for these sorts of ground moves, just as a good functional incorporation of movement into the yoga practice. So toe mobility, spreading the toes, working on that stuff, so vital for the rest of our foot health. When you're ready, come into table position. And then any seated position that would feel good. Notice how your hips are feeling. Roll your shoulders a little bit, and let's just make sure we've nourished our spine as fully as we can. Hands to your knees. Inhale, belly forward. Shoulder blades back. Exhale, round to the wall behind you. Inhale, roll to the front of your sitting bones. Squeeze shoulder blades and rise heart. And exhale, round. Feel free to let your eyelids close. And as you rise to a neutral position, walk your right hand out, bring your left arm up by your ear. Take a nice side bend here. You can hang out here with your elbow a little bit bent, or you can bring that top arm 45 degrees forward. And what I'm going to do is just reach a little forward and side like I'm between two curtains, and then get that forward curl and to the side, like a little plant that was starting to droop and then got watered. Breath is easy. Before we make it to the other side, we're going to switch the leg that is in front. And then left arm down, right arm by the ear. Either hang out here, head can be heavy, or move through this dynamic back and forth. It doesn't really matter which one you breathe in, just know that there's good rotational mobility and flexion in your upper back. And then finally, coming back through to center, hands to the back of the head. Get a sense of gentle pressing back. You're going to keep your chin down, and then spin as far as you can to one side. And spin as far as you can to the other side. What I love about this twist is it's so honest. You can't go further than your muscles will allow you to do. So there's no way to get around the active twist. Let's do one more on each side. The limitations of our active twist. Last side. And finding neutral if there's any other just gentle shapes that your body is craving right now. Anything somatic, anything dance-like. I'm going to set myself up for seated Shavasana, seated meditation, as an alternative to Shavasana. If you would like to lie down on your back, go for that. I recommend a little bit of a rolled up blanket or pillow under your knees. That puts your knees and your hips in what's called a open packed position. So usually your joints like that a little bit. If you're sitting, I recommend sitting on just a little bit of something. Your yoga block, throw pillow, whatever you got, folded towel. Allow your hands to rest heavy in your lap if you're upright, elbows sinking down, jaw slack. Whatever position you've gotten yourself into, get a sense of smoothing out the skin between the eyebrows. You can even imagine the waves at the beach, how they crash onto the sand, and as they retreat, the sand is smooth. It's packed. It's leveled. Can you imagine that rhythmic force of nature, spanda in Sanskrit, the pulsation, sweeping over your skin, smoothing out any worry lines, not for cosmetic purposes, but for deep soul understanding. Lips together, teeth apart. Eyelids stay heavy, but eyes are bright. Breath is easy, easy, easy. You're welcome to stay in seated meditation or to stay in Shavasana. Or to start to wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Make any little micro adjustments that would feel good. Gathering your knees into your chest if you're on your back, rolling to one side. Gently press up to seated. Inviting the head to be the last thing to come up. We'll each bring our palms together over the heart. Back of the neck long, chin dropping down. What a gift it is to move together throughout time and space. What a gift it is to be present in our bodies on this day. Thank yourself for being here. We work tirelessly through the practice of yoga to lift the veil on any sense of separation or division within ourselves and between ourselves and others. Now is our time to work steadily on that yoga. Namaste.